Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a fascinating and often misunderstood concept, apatheism. If you've ever wondered what it means to not care about the existence of gods, this video will challenge everything you thought you knew. Let's break it down and explore why apatheism is more than just indifference. By the time you finish watching this video, your entire perspective on apatheism will change. What if I told you that this seemingly indifferent outlook on life might actually offer a deeper understanding of belief systems and spirituality? Stick around to find out why apatheism might be the most underrated worldview of today. Apatheism is a term that has been gaining attention in recent years as an emerging worldview or attitude towards religion, belief systems, and spirituality. It is a combination of the words apatheia, meaning indifference, and theism, belief in a god or gods. At its core, apatheism is an attitude of indifference towards the question of the existence of deities, suggesting that it simply does not matter to the individual whether or not a god exists. This article will explore the concept of apatheism in greater detail, its philosophical roots and its place in contemporary thought. The origins of apatheism. Apatheism, in its modern sense, can be seen as a reaction to both theism and atheism. The word itself was coined in the late 20th century as a way of describing a stance that sits between the two extremes of belief and disbelief. While atheism is characterized by the lack of belief in gods, and theism is defined by the active belief in gods, apatheism simply takes no position on the matter. It stems from a sense of emotional detachment or indifference to the religious and metaphysical debates that dominate much of human thought. Philosophically, apatheism shares some similarities with the ancient Greek notion of apatheia, a state of emotional calmness and indifference that was sought after by the Stoics. In this sense, apatheism can be seen as a form of philosophical detachment, where individuals remain unmoved by the questions of religious significance. Apatheism and modern society. In a world where religion and belief are often seen as central to identity, apatheism presents an alternative way of relating to spiritual questions. It is not necessarily a rejection of religion, but rather an indication that religious belief is seen as irrelevant or unimportant in one's life. This approach allows individuals to focus on practical matters such as relationships, work, and personal development without being burdened by metaphysical concerns. Many people who identify with apatheism feel that the question of God's existence is an issue that has little bearing on how they live their lives. They may acknowledge the possibility of a God existing, but feel that it has no direct impact on their daily experiences or moral choices. This detachment is often seen as a coping mechanism in an increasingly complex and globalized world where the number of conflicting religious beliefs can be overwhelming. Apatheism versus atheism. While apatheism and atheism share some common ground, they are not the same thing. Atheism is the active absence of belief in gods, often accompanied by the belief that gods do not exist. Apatheism, on the other hand, does not engage in such an active dismissal of belief. It simply remains indifferent to the question of existence. For an apatheist, the existence of deities is not a relevant or important matter to their worldview. Atheism can sometimes be accompanied by a sense of certainty or conviction in the non-existence of gods, while apatheism lacks this conviction and leans more toward indifference or neutrality. An apatheist may find it unimportant whether they believe in a god or not, whereas an atheist may actively argue against the existence of gods. Philosophical implications of apatheism. Apatheism raises important questions about the nature of belief, knowledge, and human priorities. If we do not care whether gods exist, does that imply a certain level of existential nihilism, or is it simply an acknowledgement that our time and energy are better spent on more immediate and pressing concerns? This shift in priorities suggests a philosophical position that values the tangible and practical aspects of life over abstract metaphysical speculation. Apatheism can also be seen as a reflection of contemporary society's increasing focus on individualism, secularism, and materialism. As religion becomes less central to the lives of many people in Western societies, alternative worldviews like apatheism may continue to grow in prominence. Apatheism represents a distinctive philosophical perspective that emphasizes indifference to the question of God's existence. It offers an alternative to both theism and atheism, focusing instead on the practical and personal aspects of life. In a world where religious belief is increasingly questioned, apatheism provides a way of navigating the complexities of spirituality without the burden of engaging in deep theological debates. As society continues to evolve, apatheism may become an increasingly relevant and attractive worldview for those seeking a more detached, pragmatic approach to life's big questions. The role of apatheism in modern spirituality. Modern spirituality is a diverse and evolving landscape that encompasses a wide range of beliefs, practices, and philosophies. In recent decades, there has been a noticeable shift away from traditional religious structures and towards more individualistic and personalized forms of spirituality. One such trend within modern spirituality is apatheism, a worldview that emphasizes emotional indifference towards the question of the existence of gods or a higher power. This article will explore the role of apatheism in modern spirituality, its implications for spiritual practices, and how it fits into the broader trend of spiritual seeking in the 21st century. Apatheism as a response to religious institutions. One of the driving forces behind the rise of apatheism is the increasing disillusionment with traditional religious institutions. In many parts of the world, organized religions have faced criticism for their perceived dogmatism, hypocrisy, and inability to address the real-world challenges facing individuals today. In response, many people have turned away from institutionalized religion in search of more personal, less structured forms of spirituality. Apatheism as a worldview offers an alternative to the rigid frameworks of traditional religions. It allows individuals to reject the authority of religious dogma without necessarily rejecting spirituality altogether. For the apatheist, spirituality is not necessarily tied to the question of gods or the afterlife, but may be more focused on personal growth, mindfulness, and emotional well-being. Apatheism and the search for meaning. Although apatheism entails indifference towards religious questions, it does not necessarily imply a lack of interest in the search for meaning. Many apatheists are still deeply concerned with existential questions about purpose, happiness, and fulfillment, but they approach these questions without relying on traditional religious explanations. Instead of looking to religious doctrine for answers, apatheists may turn to philosophy, science, psychology, or personal experience as sources of meaning. In this sense, apatheism can be seen as part of a broader trend in modern spirituality, where individuals seek meaning and purpose without the need for supernatural or divine explanations. It is a form of spirituality that is grounded in the real world and focused on personal experience and individual growth rather than on the belief in gods or the supernatural. Mindfulness and meditation in apatheism. One area where apatheism intersects with modern spiritual practices is in the growing interest in mindfulness and meditation. These practices, which originated in Eastern traditions, have gained widespread popularity in the West as secular tools for stress reduction, emotional regulation, and personal growth. For apatheists, mindfulness and meditation can serve as ways to cultivate inner peace, emotional resilience, and a sense of purpose without invoking religious beliefs or doctrines. Mindfulness, in particular, encourages practitioners to focus on the present moment and develop a deep sense of awareness of their thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. This practice is often seen as a way to connect with one's inner self, promote emotional well-being, and foster a sense of spiritual fulfillment without the need for belief in a higher power. The role of apatheism in secular spirituality. Apatheism is closely aligned with the broader trend of secular spirituality, which emphasizes personal growth, self-improvement, and emotional well-being over traditional religious beliefs. Secular spiritual practices may include mindfulness, yoga, and meditation, as well as a focus on ethics, social justice, and environmental sustainability. These practices are often grounded in humanistic values and aim to cultivate a sense of purpose and meaning in life without relying on religious or supernatural explanations. In the context of secular spirituality, apatheism offers a way to navigate the complexities of modern life without becoming entangled in religious debates or metaphysical questions. It allows individuals to focus on what is important to them personally, whether that be personal development, relationships, or social engagement, without feeling the need to answer questions about the existence of gods or the nature of the universe. Apatheism plays a significant role in the evolution of modern spirituality, offering a path that values personal growth and meaning without the need for belief in gods or the supernatural. It provides an alternative to traditional religious structures while still allowing individuals to explore existential questions and spiritual practices. As society continues to move away from traditional religious institutions and embraces more individualized approaches to spirituality, apatheism may continue to shape the future of spiritual seeking in the 21st century. Apatheism and atheism are terms that are often used interchangeably, but they refer to distinct attitudes towards religion and belief in gods. While both involve a lack of belief in a deity, the underlying motivations, philosophical outlooks, and implications of each position differ. This article will explore the key differences and similarities between apatheism and atheism, shedding light on their respective worldviews and their place in contemporary discussions of belief and spirituality. Defining atheism. Atheism is generally defined as the lack of belief in gods or deities. More specifically, it is the position that there is no god or gods, and this belief is often grounded in a philosophical or logical rejection of theistic claims. Atheism has long been associated with a scientific and empirical approach to understanding the universe, with many atheists arguing that there is insufficient evidence to support the existence of a deity. Atheism can be subdivided into several categories, such as strong atheism, the active belief that gods do not exist, and weak atheism, the lack of belief in gods without necessarily claiming that gods do not exist. However, at its core, atheism is characterized by an absence of belief in gods and a rejection of theistic claims. Defining apatheism. Apatheism, on the other hand, is an attitude of indifference towards the question of whether or not gods exist. Unlike atheism, which actively rejects the existence of deities, apatheism takes no particular stance on the matter, arguing that the question of God's existence is ultimately irrelevant to the individual. Apatheism is not necessarily rooted in a philosophical or logical argument against gods. Rather, it reflects a personal, emotional detachment from religious questions. For an apatheist, the existence of gods is simply not a concern that influences their life choices, moral values, or worldview. The focus of an apatheist is on living a fulfilling life, with little to no thought given to the question of whether or not a deity exists. Key similarities. Both atheism and apatheism share a rejection of traditional religious beliefs. Atheists do not believe in gods, and apatheists do not care about the question of God's existence. In both cases, individuals reject the notion that religious belief or the existence of gods is necessary for living a meaningful life. Additionally, both atheism and apatheism can be seen as responses to the dominance of religious belief in society. They are part of a broader trend of secularism, where individuals question or step away from traditional religious structures and search for alternative ways of understanding the world. Key differences. The primary difference between atheism and apatheism lies in the degree of engagement with the question of the existence of gods. Atheism actively rejects the existence of gods, often grounded in logical or empirical arguments against theism. Atheists are typically more vocal about their disbelief, and many atheists engage in debates and discussions about the validity of religious claims. In contrast, apatheism is characterized by emotional detachment and indifference. Apatheists do not actively argue against the existence of gods. Instead, they simply do not care whether or not gods exist. For an apatheist, the question of God's existence holds no personal significance, and it is not something they spend time contemplating or debating. While atheism and apatheism share some common ground, they are distinct positions with different implications for how individuals engage with religious and spiritual questions. Atheism actively rejects the idea of gods, while apatheism remains indifferent to the matter altogether. Both perspectives are part of a growing trend of secularism, where individuals seek meaning and fulfillment outside the boundaries of traditional religious belief. How apatheism influences moral and ethical thinking. Apatheism, as a worldview marked by indifference to the question of the existence of gods, may have profound implications for moral and ethical thinking. Without reliance on religious doctrines or divine commandments, apatheists often turn to alternative sources of morality, such as humanistic values, philosophical reasoning, and personal experience. This article will explore how apatheism influences moral and ethical decision-making, focusing on its impact on the development of personal ethics and social responsibility. The secular foundation of apatheism. Apatheism is inherently secular in nature, as it does not rely on religious or divine sources to answer life's fundamental questions. For many apatheists, morality is seen as a product of human reasoning, social context, and empathy rather than divine decree. In this sense, apatheism aligns with secular humanism, a worldview that emphasizes the importance of human agency and the capacity to create meaning and moral values independent of religious belief. Without a belief in divine authority, apatheists often look to secular ethical frameworks to guide their behavior. This may include ethical systems such as consequentialism, deontology, virtue ethics, or relativism, each offering a different approach to moral decision-making, ethics without divine commandments. One of the central ethical questions that apatheists grapple with is the source of moral values. In traditional theistic worldviews, morality is often understood as being derived from a divine source, such as God's commandments or religious texts. Apatheism, however, does not rely on such divine commands and instead places moral responsibility on the individual. For apatheists, morality is often understood as something that emerges from human interaction, empathy, and the social contract. Instead of relying on religious texts or divine commands, apatheists may look to reason, empathy, and the well-being of others as guiding principles for ethical behavior. This can result in a more flexible and context-dependent approach to morality, where ethical decisions are made based on their consequences for individuals and society. Personal responsibility and accountability. Without the expectation of divine judgment, apatheists may place greater emphasis on personal responsibility and accountability. Ethical decision-making for an apatheist often involves considering the impact of one's actions on others and making choices that align with personal values and the greater good. In a world where there is no ultimate divine authority to enforce moral behavior, apatheists may feel a stronger sense of personal agency and responsibility for their actions. This can lead to a more individualized approach to ethics, where individuals take ownership of their decisions and strive to make choices that contribute positively to society. Social ethics and compassion. Apatheism does not preclude a commitment to social justice or compassion for others. Many apatheists, like secular humanists, believe that the pursuit of human well-being, equality, and justice is an important ethical endeavor. This commitment to social ethics may manifest in activism, volunteerism, or other forms of engagement with social issues. The emphasis on empathy and compassion in ethical thinking allows apatheists to develop moral values that promote the well-being of all people, regardless of religious belief. This can lead to a more inclusive and tolerant approach to ethical decision-making, where the moral worth of individuals is not determined by their religious affiliations. Apatheism has a unique influence on moral and ethical thinking, emphasizing personal responsibility, human reasoning, and social responsibility over divine commands. By focusing on empathy, reason, and human well-being, apatheism encourages individuals to develop moral values that are rooted in the real world rather than in religious belief. In doing so, it offers an alternative framework for ethical decision-making that is flexible, context-dependent, and human-centered. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Drop your thoughts on apatheism in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. See you in the next video.